Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are looking at a pretty unique system for grading our laws and institutions, but it's not based on their popularity or even their effects. It's based on something way deeper, their connection to reality itself. It's called ARES, and it's a scorecard with a very specific point of view. So, let's dive in.
It's a huge question, right? What really makes a law good? Is it about making people happy? Is it about getting a specific outcome? Or is there, some kind of deeper standard we should be using? It's a question we've been wrestling with for, forever.
Well, the folks behind this explainer, the American Epistemology Institute, they have a pretty strong take. They argue that our ability to even have that debate in the first place is broken. In their words, without a shared understanding of what's real, our public discourse is totally shattered, which makes any kind of coherent evaluation pretty much impossible.
So, to fix this, they say we need to go back to a more classical way of thinking. And the idea is actually pretty simple. Everything has to build on a solid foundation. You see it here, right? To get good laws, you need sound politics. For sound politics, you need a clear ethical framework. And, they argue, for any of that to work, your ethics have to be based on metaphysics, a straight, consistent answer to the biggest question of all, what is actually real?
And this brings us right to their solution. ARES, which stands for the American Realist Evaluation System. It's basically a scorecard, a rubric, designed to do just one thing: measure whether any given law or institution is built on that very specific philosophical foundation of realism.
So, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get into exactly how this ARES scorecard works. Then, we're going to run two big case studies through the system: the U.S. Constitution and the Federal Reserve Act. And finally, we'll unpack what those results tell us, at least according to the people who created it.
All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts. How does this thing actually work? Well, it all boils down to one central philosophical clash.
So ARES is set up to be a referee between these two completely opposite worldviews. On one side, you've got realism, the idea that an objective reality exists, whether we believe in it or not. And on the other side, you have constructivism, the idea that reality is basically manufactured by us, by our will, our language, our social power. And let's be super clear, ARES is not a neutral referee here. It's explicitly designed to champion the realist point of view.
The whole evaluation process happens in two distinct stages. It's not just about getting a number out of 100. First, whatever you're testing has to get through a really strict philosophical gate. And in a lot of ways, this pass or fail judgment is way more important than the final score. This first part is called the R gate, short for realist gate. You can think of it like a bouncer at a philosophical nightclub. The artifact gets asked 5 super fundamental questions, and if it fails even one of them, it gets labeled constructivist. It doesn't get that realist stamp of approval, no matter how well it might score later on.
And these are the 5 sentinel questions. They're checking for some big ideas. Does it assume an objective order in the universe, a fixed human nature? Does it base morality on natural law, the idea that right and wrong are kind of baked into the fabric of reality? It even checks if language is being used in a stable, classical way, and if power flows up from the people, not down from the state. To get past that bouncer, you got to get a yes on all 5. Okay, so after the R gate, we get to part 2. The domain index. This is where the really detailed scoring happens. And whether something passed or failed that first gate, it still gets this detailed score from 0 to 100, just to show exactly how much it aligns, or doesn't align, with the realist view.
That final score comes from 5 different domains, and they're all weighted equally. An artifact gets rated from 0 to 5 in each of these areas: metaphysics, ethics, political form, and so on. The system just averages those scores and multiplies by 20 to get that final number out of 100. Simple as that.
So all that theory is great, but what does this look like in practice? Let's take a really famous document and run it through the ARES system, the original U.S. Constitution from 1789.
And look at that! According to this analysis, the Constitution just sails right through the R gate. It checks the objective order box because it references the laws of nature. It checks the fixed human nature box with its unalienable rights. And with things like the 10th Amendment making sure power flows from the bottom up, it gets a clean pass on all 5 questions.
And its final score? A massive 96 out of 100. That is an incredibly high alignment with realist principles.
The analysis says the only points it lost were for a supposed weakening of local power in the Commerce Clause. This idea that decisions should be made at the most local level possible.
Okay, now for some contrast. Let's take a look at another foundational piece of American law, but one from a totally different time. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913.
And it's a complete flip. The ARES analysis fails the Federal Reserve Act on every single question. For example, it fails objective order because it treats money as elastic and based on expert consensus, not a fixed real standard. It fails bottom-up sovereignty by creating this super powerful board that's insulated from direct public control. It's just a definitive fail all the way down the line.
And its final score definitely reflects that total flame out at the gate, just a 12 out of 100. The source's analysis gives it a flat 0 for its underlying metaphysics, basically saying it's a profound break from that whole realist framework.
So, what do we actually see when we put these two evaluations right next to each other? Well, the ARES system is designed to show a really stark contrast.
And this just spells it out visually, doesn't it? We're not just talking about a few points here and there. The system sees these two things as belonging to fundamentally different philosophical universes. One gets a 96, the other a 12. It's not even close.
This table just puts it all together perfectly. You've got the Constitution, passes the gate, scores a 96, gets labeled realist conformant. Then you have the Federal Reserve Act, fails the gate, scores a 12, gets labeled constructivist. According to ARES, these aren't just two different laws, they are operating in two completely different realities.
So, what's the whole point of this exercise? Well, this quote from the source really reveals the mission. ARES is designed to pull the debate away from all the surface-level politics and force it back to what they call first principles, those deep, hidden philosophical beliefs that we almost never talk about.
So here's the real takeaway. Whether you agree with its philosophy or not, the whole point of the ARES tool is to be a diagnostic tool. It's built to take a law, pop the hood, and tell you which kind of engine is running it, a realist one or a constructivist one. The score is really just a symptom of that much deeper diagnosis. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to chew on. This scorecard is obviously built on a very particular definition of what's real. But it makes you wonder, if you could design your own scorecard for reality, what values would you put on it? And what would you measure first?